and mathematics go for coffee. You know, math, you've really got it good.
What in the world are you talking about? You're God, for God's sakes. Or should I say, for your sake. I mean, how much better can it get? How could I, math, possibly have it better than you do?
Well, I will tell you how. People get you. They understand mathematics. They don't try to make you into something that you're not. And they don't have expectations of you that are impossible to fulfill.
Wow. I didn't know that you had it that bad. Sounds like God needs a therapist.
Well, maybe a better PR agency. It's just frustrating when people make me into something that I'm not. They don't understand that God is principle, or the unformed absolute, the force, the ground of being, not a being. I mean, for centuries, they've been confusing their form with my form. And even these good unity folks here sometimes talk to me like I'm a person up in the sky.
Well, I admit it's a hard image to let go of. I mean, they grew up hearing about you as a divine man with flowing white hair and lives in the skies and grants wishes or punishes people. I mean, by definition, you are impossible to understand. So they do the best that they can, and they do whatever they come up with, which will always fall short.
I just wish that they could see me the way that they see you. I mean, comparing me to mathematics is probably closer to what I really am than thinking of me as a person with skin on. I mean, it's not a perfect analogy, but I guess you'll just have to do.
Hey, watch it.
You know, just like math, I am a set of principles that are always operating in the world. I don't intervene and play favorites. I mean, I don't bless the Cubs and curse the Cardinals. Well, except in 2016. A lot of fun. But I'm a set of rules, of law, and of order, just like you. And I'm also like art, which follows rules and order, but also goes beyond them into something that you cannot define.
Right. Principles are always working in the world, but you never actually see them. You can't put either of us in a box or touch us, but you can see us expressed through people and things. We are here, but we're formless.
And that's not warm and fuzzy. People can't hug a principle. Well, I mean, you can hug a principle, but the other kind of principle, not this kind of principle. You can hug that kind of principle, but people want a friend in God and someone that they can talk to and ask things from, and, well, you can't do that with a principle. So that's why they anthropomorphize me.
Ooh, anthropomorphize. Write that one down. Well, you're right. People do give you personal attributes where they don't do that with me. But it still seems you've got it better than me. I mean, heck, people worship you and build buildings for you.
Well, I could argue that some people build buildings to you. I mean, think about all those buildings on Wall Street. And scientists and mathematicians and even atheists have a sort of worship of you.
But remember, I'm not exactly the same as you. I am a subset of you. You have the burden of encompassing everything. You aren't just the principles of math, you are the principle of life itself. You encompass straightforward things like me, but also emotions and art and psychology and, well, everything. That's a big job. Lots of room for misunderstanding. My job is easier than yours. I'm easier to get.
You're right. But it is so important for people to get what I am. Until we realize that I am not separate from them, but working in and through them, they miss their own identity. The power I have only expresses through them. And when they put that power outside of themselves, they don't realize that they are giving away part of themselves. They don't know what's within them.
So we need to encourage them to discover the power within you. Get it? It's a little Unity book humor.
Oh my gosh, hilarious. Well, listen, math, thank you so much for listening.
Sure. But, I'm not really listening, right?
Right, because neither of us is really here. God is not drinking coffee with math, and math doesn't really have kind of a weak sense of humor.
Ouch. Well, maybe math has some feelings,
Well, I apologize, but again, we're not really here. And we're not really having this coffee. But just in case this really did happen, I want to say thanks, Matt. I feel better.
Anytime, God. Anytime.
God. I have been given the signal that the women's soccer team is up 2-0. All right. It's 2-0. Updates coming to you live through my earpiece. God. Let's talk about God, shall we? A big topic. Trying to understand this big, indescribable, almost impossible word that is pointing at something, but not the thing itself. This is a field of study called ontology. Not oncology, ontology. So you can remember anthropomorphize, you can remember ontology, and I'll give you one more, epistemology. So we are going school-wise here. So we are studying the nature of ultimate reality. That's what ontology is. What do we believe about what actually exists and how this works? And to use that, we are dabbling in epistemology, which is the field of study of knowledge. How do we know what we know? Why do we believe what we believe? It's something that most of us probably just take for granted until you start to look into it and realize, wow, how do those beliefs get in there? Why am I sure about that, but I'm not sure about that? And why can't one person know a certain thing about a topic and another person knows completely different? It's complicated how we come to these beliefs, including what you believe about God. So start at the beginning. Go back to when you were, about 5 or 6 or 7 and just starting to get this thing called God. What were the words that you would have used as a 5-year-old? What was your understanding of God back then? What words did you use for God? What was God like? Powerful. Infinite. You had the word infinite when you were 5? Awesome. You were smart. Okay, good. So we have an infinite, powerful Father. What was that?
Our Father.
Our Father. Love in the sky. Punish. Anybody else have the punishing God? Okay. Who had the love God? Okay, a few of you had the love God. A few of you had the punishing God. How many of you had no God? Okay. What other words? Invisible. Forgiving. Wow. You got the forgiving, infinite God. I got this judging God that had a book like Santa that was writing, I see other heads nodding, that was writing down and keeping track. God was a good scorekeeper of what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. God was also confusing. I remember that when I went on my first plane trip, which was in probably 6th grade, I remember being so excited. I got on the plane and my mom made sure that I got to sit in the window seat, and I literally remember flying above the clouds and looking down to see where were the harps, where were the angels, and where was God. I literally remember looking for that in the clouds. I took it literally that that's where God lived. And all of that we just talked about and more is something called your embedded theology. Your embedded theology is what you grew up with, what you were told, what you took in as you were young. And your embedded theology never really leaves you. It can transform and shift. You can work with it. But that core embedded theology is in all of us. So for me, it's that man in the sky that I grew up with, that image that's always going to be rolling around in my brain, and at times I'm going to grab onto that. Even when I hear a song like the one we just sang today, use me, God. Like, I am something for someone else to be using. And I realized, oh yeah, at first I understand that, and then another part of me comes online and says, is that the language that I would use today? So I invite you to think about the words that you use and the understanding that you have, in addition to the feelings that you have. It's good to explore this in all the ways that we can. And so here in Unity, we have some things that we like to say in trying to understand God. We have our first principle. What is our first principle in Unity?
There's only one presence.
There's only one presence, one power,
In the universe.
the universe and in my life. God is. I love it. You guys are great. You're paying attention. At least most of you. No, just kidding. All right, so yes, we believe in this one presence and one power. Not two, not a duality. And what else do we believe about? What other words do we use about it? So, and I just wanted to share this great quote from Bishop John Robinson. He says this about our embedded theology. Most of us have grown up with the primitive concept of God, a big man, sort of an absentee landlord. The idea of a God, spiritually or metaphysically out there, dies very hard. It's very hard to move past that. And all of our language and many of our songs, not all of it, but a lot of our language and songs sort of supports that. The Empower Music is the Unity branch of our music department. And they work really hard when they're publishing songs to see that it reflects an accurate theology for us. So just so you know, that's something that is underneath happening here in Unity. The prayers at Silent Unity also. Is it accurately reflecting our theology? Because even some of the things in our own books don't actually reflect that when we get down to the language of personal pronouns. It's very challenging. And Eric Butterworth says this. He said, Jesus, with his unique concept of God, has never really had his say in many Christian churches. Jesus didn't get to have his say. And Jesus said, God is spirit, and they that worship him worship in spirit and truth. And Butterworth says that this is not a definition of God. You cannot define God. Well, thanks, Eric. I wish I'd read that earlier. Okay, you cannot define God, but we're going to do our best. But what Jesus did was he gave us a guide to direct our thoughts away from form or from God as a Superman. He encouraged us to look at God as the spirit and the flow and an essence and an experience. And Charles Fillmore said this about how we describe God. Charles Fillmore says, the whole order of thinking must be reversed. God is principle, is the absolute good expressed in all creation, not a being or a person, but that invisible, intangible, but very real something we call life. I think life may be my favorite synonym for God, life. Because it flows. It's not something that is contained. It's not something that I can put in a box, but it's everywhere present. It's everywhere. And so what do we really believe in Unity about God? When you try to categorize us, there are a couple of different ways that we might look at it. The first question that we might ask about our belief in God is God within or without? Is God immanent within me, knowable, or is it transcendent, out there, above, beyond? Is God immanent or transcendent? What do we think?
Both.
Both. Good answer, everybody. Both or neither. I heard a friend of mine say one time, asking where God is like asking the question, are the numbers 5 and 6 married? It makes no sense. 5 and 6 can't be married. Where is God? God is not really locatable because God is everything. Is God pouring into and or out of me? Yes, no, all of the above. And it's about this time that I throw up my arms and I think, have I made any sense at all? I'm just like going in circles. But that's what makes it exciting, because you can never quite fully answer it for yourself. And the minute that you think you have, another little something will spark in your brain. Ooh, what if I thought about it this way? I'm always looking for the ways to explain it. What if we looked at God like math? Or what if I looked at God like the flow of a river? What if I looked at God like all that life is? So when I pray, I notice that if I shift some of those words, it can make a difference. Dear God versus dear life. I've shifted my energy now to a more open position when I shift one word. So we can play with that. You can play with that. What are the words that you like to use today if you don't use the word God?
Love.
Love. Bruce sang it for us. Love is my religion. What other words do you substitute?
Energy.
Energy.
Spirit.
Spirit.
Life.
Life. Anyone else? What else?
Grace.
Grace.
Light.
Light. Imagine, dear light, like finding a light bulb. Dear light, and praying to the light bulb. And yet, there is a validity in all the ways that we experience God. Another way that we might look at it, besides immanent and transcendent, is what's called the three faces of God. That we can see three different ways and experiences and relationships with God. The first one is the inner face of God, the God that is you, your inner connection, awareness, expression. Eric Butterworth said that you are God at the point of view. You are God. Have I not said that ye are gods? It is written in your laws, said Jesus. Ye are gods. So the first one is the inner face of God, this God. Then the second is the intimate one, or the other. I understand God in the I-thou relationship. I understand you because I experience you outside of me. And the third face is the infinite. God is all. God is life. And so having an understanding of the three different ways and understanding that we have all three within us, the three faces of God, the inner, the other, and the infinite. And so putting unity in a category of theism is a real challenge. What do we fully believe about God? We are often put in the camp of panentheism. Anybody heard of that one before? How many know? Who's going to come up and define panentheism for me? Present in everything. And that's actually more a definition of pantheism. Present in everything and then some is where the N. So pantheism and panentheism, I like to think of it as the extra syllable, is something more. So it's present everywhere, and there's something to the mystery of it that we don't understand. And I kind of like that. But then when I read some of the descriptions, I'm not totally sure. Am I a pantheist? Am I a panentheist? Then I found one that I really kind of liked. Eatism. Anyone heard of that one? No, okay, I stumped the crowd today. Eatism is spelled with an I, and it was more of a definition. It was like panentheism without even the God. Like it acknowledges that it's an unknown, but it's not agnosticism. But they wanted to lump it in with that. So even finding a category is really challenging for us. And so I continue to play with that mystery. Since most people consider unity panentheistic, I'll go along with that for now. But I also really like the Taoist perspective. I really like the teaching of the way. That God is the life. They don't even use the word God particularly, but the way of life. The flow of life. It's more God as a verb. I kind of like that. This mystery of the flow of life. And yet, if I have a challenging time in my life, I'm down on my knees praying to the God of the ceiling as quickly as anybody is. And that's okay. Sometimes that's how it starts, and then it evolves into an affirmation. And it's still a really powerful prayer to ask for help. And there was a couple once that went through a challenging time right after they moved to a new city and they didn't have their bearings straight yet. The husband started to have some heart problems. And he'd had them before, but they'd always passed. But this time it wasn't calming down. So his heart was beating really fast. So the wife went into a couple of different places to try to find out where in the world is a hospital. Imagine you've just moved and you don't know where the nearest hospital is, and your husband's got this going on. So they finally find the hospital, and they wheel him in, and they find out the heart rate is 240 beats a minute. He's in trouble. So they give him the first medication, and it doesn't work. And it's still going 240 beats a minute. So the wife sees people down the hall rushing and crash carts and people flying around trying to do something. She didn't know at the time, but if they didn't get that heart rate down, he was probably going to pass. He was not going to make it. And in that moment, even though the husband was a bit of an atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, not really sure what to call this God thing, here's what he prayed. God loves me, and I love God. God loves me, and I love God. God loves me, and I love God. Over and over and over again in the ER. That's what he prayed. And eventually the next medication took the heart rate down. And how interesting that someone that wouldn't pray that way in that life and death moment prayed, God loves me, and I love God. And if you want to know more about that story, you can ask Arturo about it personally. Because that's what happened to us when we first moved to Kansas City for me to go to seminary. In our first week, we ended up in the ER. And they ended up treating him, and he's fine, and he wrote an article about it for Unity magazine. And so even he, who is very mindful of his God language and what that word means to him, pulled that out and prayed in that way. And sometimes that's what my prayers are like too. I'll start with okay, I've got an issue in my life. Dear God, please help me with this. Please. And then I'll have this moment of recognition. Oh, wait, I also have some power. Discover the power within you. I also have power. There's a power I don't understand, and then there's also one within me. So I now call on the power and the strength and the love and the help within me. And then I take that beyond. And I affirm that there is health and wisdom and healing and harmony present now and in all situations. And so it is. So you can move from a very specific other type of prayer to a very global, affirmative knowing. And really, truly, the best way is simply to experience God. So you set aside all the definitions and the categories, and you go within and you say, how do I experience God? You know, as peace and as love and as release and as an exhale after a bad day. That feels like God to me. Meister Eckhart said that theologians argue, but mystics agree. Those of us that go within and find the God within all agree on the magnificence that we experience. And then scientists tell us another interesting thing. Andrew Newberg, who does functional MRIs and has done a lot of studies and written a lot of books, you've probably seen him on television, discovered this by studying people who are contemplating God. If you contemplate God long enough, something surprising happens in the brain. Neural functioning begins to change. It strengthens social awareness and empathy and decreases anger. Thinking about God, what you've just done just now, if they could hook us all up, you have lit up parts of your brain that are good for you. And he goes on to say that religion and spirituality are constantly changing, and this is good for both society and for your brain. New ideas challenge us to go deeper, making you more likely to have an epiphany that improves your life. The studies found the more that you thought about God, the more that you sat in meditation, the more that you studied this, the more you opened yourself up to the possibility of a God moment, of those unitive experiences when you are God, when you get it, when you are there. And that you can train yourself to have more of that in your life by studying ontology and using your epistemology and looking at how we anthropomorphize God, all of those big words come down so that it's ultimately experience. And I encourage you to keep doing this and to play with this and to take it lightly and to have some fun with it and to try a new way of understanding God. Because the great news is it's good for your brain, it's good for your life, it's good for your soul. Keep contemplating God. And so it is. Blessings. And now we have the opportunity to give back into our beloved community. And as you take out your offerings, Bruce, you can come on up. He's so polite waiting for me to stop talking. That's never going to happen. So we are grateful, and I encourage you to be mindful then, and perhaps even take this up to your heart and know that you are part of giving forth in a prosperity circle, the cycle of life, giving and receiving. We do it mindfully. And I'll say a line and have you repeat, divine love through me.
Divine love through me.
Blesses and multiplies.
Blesses and multiplies.
All that I have.
All that I have.
All that I give.
All that I give.
And all that I receive.
And all that I receive.
Thank you. Lead me into the light. I invite you now into this sacred time of meditation. And if it's comfortable and in your practice, to gently close your outer eyes, or to have a soft gaze, to pick a focal point. We begin by noticing the body. Sitting in the chair, my spine is straight and relaxed. Let the tension out of my shoulders, my hands, my legs, wherever I'm holding it. Breathe in and let it out. And next I notice this breath that is coming and going. This breath that is breathing me. I let go of any effort and I let it flow. Each breath in is natural and effortless and complete on its own. I am one with this breath. And as I focus there, I am fully present. I catch each moment as it comes. And I marvel at the depth that is right here. The universe is in this moment. All needs are met. All answers appear. All conflict dissolves. Right here I breathe perfection. Place, as I let go, I welcome the silence. I welcome this infinite place to receive. I rest in silence. For this time, we are grateful. For a moment of peace and calm in a busy world, we've been gifted. And as my energy connects with those around me, it is strengthened. It rises up. And as we join together as a community, we are all lifted up together. And from this place of love and wisdom and joy, we send that blessing out into this community, to those around us, in our lives, in the towns surrounding us. We are a beacon of love. And then each one of us sends that out even farther to all corners of the world, to all of existence. We send love and harmony. And we know that this effort and this knowing and this energy makes a difference. We have made a difference here today. The world is a better place for it. And so it is. Namaste.